In the soft turquoise shallows of a tropical bay, the water gleams like polished glass. Overhead, seabirds spiral in the warming sky. Below, a pod of dolphins carves graceful arcs through the surface, leaping, twisting, landing with splashes that seem more like laughter than movement. For centuries, this scene has symbolized harmony and joy. Dolphins are the darlings of mythology, the companions of sailors, the emblems of childlike purity in the vast and mysterious sea. But this surface-level charm is a masterstroke of biological misdirection. Because dolphins, particularly bottlenose dolphins, are not the carefree clowns we imagine. They are strategic predators, opportunistic aggressors, and in some of their darker moments, they are sadists. The bottlenose dolphin's grin is an evolutionary coincidence, a fixed curvature of the jawline and musculature that mimics human joy. But within that perpetual smile are up to 100 conical teeth, each designed to pierce, seize, and hold. In feeding, these teeth are tools of capture rather than cutting. Dolphins swallow their prey whole, often tossing fish into the air or stunning them with explosive slaps of the tail. But this is only the beginning of their behavioral repertoire. Unlike most predators, dolphins do not kill merely for sustenance. They manipulate their environment for stimulation. They play, and sometimes their play turns lethal. Reports across oceans and decades document dolphins engaging in highly coordinated violence against other animals. In the wild, groups of bottlenose males have been observed cornering porpoises, not for food but seemingly for sport. These attacks involve ramming at high speeds, flipping the victim into the air, and striking with their rostrums, the elongated snouts, with such force that internal organs rupture. The aftermath often reveals injuries inconsistent with predation, broken ribs, collapsed lungs, and trauma to the head. The carcasses are left uneaten. These are not mistakes. They are rituals. In some regions, particularly around the coasts of Scotland and the southeastern US, dolphin-on-porpoise aggression has become disturbingly common. The prevailing scientific theory: displacement aggression or reproductive stress. Male dolphins, especially in mating season, become hypercompetitive. When deprived of access to receptive females, they redirect that aggression towards smaller cetaceans. In essence, their social tension becomes ecological violence. But it's not only other species that feel the brunt of dolphin aggression. Dolphins have been observed committing infanticide within their own pods. Newborn calves are sometimes killed by adult males, especially if the calf is not their own. The motive? By eliminating a nursing calf, a male may return the mother to estrus, making her receptive to mating again. It's a chilling parallel to infanticidal behavior seen in terrestrial predators like lions and langurs, an evolutionary drive for reproductive dominance, cloaked behind that ever-smiling face. Their intelligence, often celebrated in popular science, is part of the mechanism that makes this behavior so unsettling. Dolphins possess the largest brains relative to body size among marine mammals, with a neocortex that rivals our own in complexity. They engage in long-term social bonding, coalition formation, and cultural transmission of learned behaviors. These are not mindless beasts. They are capable of empathy, cooperation, and manipulation. Captivity only intensifies these traits. In confined environments, dolphins have been recorded displaying high levels of aggression toward both humans and each other. Trainers have reported bites, body slams, and coordinated harassment. Male dolphins in particular may become sexually aggressive, mounting humans attacking female dolphins, or displaying mating behavior toward inanimate objects. Without space to disperse, stimulation to occupy them, or natural hierarchies to enforce social norms, dolphins can descend into volatile, unpredictable behavior. In one infamous case, a dolphin named Tuffy, used in US Navy military training, repeatedly refused to follow commands and displayed what was described as psychological resistance. In others, dolphins have been documented luring swimmers into deeper waters, then circling or tail-slapping them with escalating intensity. A behavior that some experts interpret as territorial or corrective, but which, from a human perspective, feels disturbingly coercive. This is not to suggest that dolphins are evil, malicious, or inherently violent. Rather, they are apex-level mammals navigating a world through intellect, emotion, and complex social rules. In the wild, these traits serve them well. Dolphins form long-term alliances, particularly males, who cooperate in bachelor pods to pursue and sequester females for reproduction. They use signature whistles to communicate identity, employ cooperative hunting strategies to herd fish, and even use tools, like sponges, to protect their rostrums while foraging along the seafloor. But intelligence does not guarantee benevolence. It only increases the options. Ecologically, dolphins shape their environments not just as hunters, but as behavioral architects. Their presence influences the schooling behavior of fish, the distribution of smaller predators, and the dynamics of surface interactions. Their echolocation, a sophisticated sonar system that emits clicks and interprets the returning echoes, gives them an unparalleled 3D awareness of their surroundings. They can identify shape, size, and even internal composition of objects, allowing them to track prey hidden beneath sand or scan the bodies of humans with eerie precision. In captivity, this sonar ability adds another layer of discomfort. Dolphins can read our skeletal structure, monitor our heartbeat, and potentially sense physiological changes in our bodies. The smiling, playful dolphin that approaches you in a tank may know more about your body than any medical scan, and use that information however it chooses. Yet for all this, we adore them. We paint murals of them, build oceanariums for them, write songs and movies that elevate them to near mythical protectors of the sea. And perhaps that is the most dangerous part of all. Not the bite, not the intelligence, but the illusion, the comforting myth that these animals are incapable of cruelty, that they are somehow exempt from the primal equations that govern every other predator on the planet. Because in truth, the dolphin is not a smiling hero. It is a highly intelligent, socially complex, emotionally rich predator that sometimes chooses violence, not for food, but for dominance, sex, or even curiosity. In the sunlit shallows, where the water glows blue and the waves whisper of play, the pod leaps again. Their eyes glint with awareness, their bodies ripple with power. And beneath that eternal grin, there lies something deeper, something real, something we don't always want to see. The reef is quiet in the early morning light. Beams of golden sun cut through the surface and scatter across the seabed, dancing between coral towers and seagrass fields like fireflies in a glass jar. Small fish flit in and out of holes in the reef, crabs tiptoe across rubble-strewn flats, and floating just above the sand, propelled by tiny fluttering fins, is a creature so visually disarming it almost looks like a toy. The pufferfish, with its stubby snout, doe-like eyes, and clumsy paddling motion, it seems innocent, even comical. But this is no underwater cartoon. This is one of the ocean's most chemically dangerous organisms, a slow-moving sphere of neurotoxic consequence, evolved not to chase you, but to ensure you regret coming too close. There are over 120 species of pufferfish in the family Tetraodontidae, found throughout tropical and subtropical oceans. While they vary in size, color, and habitat, their defining characteristic remains the same: the ability to inflate. This defensive adaptation, which involves rapidly gulping water, or air when on land, causes their elastic stomachs to expand up to 3 times their normal volume. In this state, the puffer becomes nearly unrecognizable, a spiked orb bristling with spines, transformed from prey into problem. The inflation is not designed for elegance. It's a last resort message. I am not worth your trouble. But the inflation is merely a warning flare. The true weapon lies beneath the skin, inside the liver, gonads, and other organs. A compound called tetrodotoxin. This potent neurotoxin is one of the most lethal biological substances known. Just 2 milligrams, less than a grain of salt, is enough to kill an adult human. The mechanism of action is as elegant as it is horrifying. Tetrodotoxin binds to voltage-gated sodium channels in nerve cells, blocking the transmission of electrical impulses. This paralyzes skeletal muscles, including the diaphragm, leading to asphyxiation. Victims remain fully conscious as their body shuts down, unable to move, breathe, or speak. Death, when it arrives, is silent and unrelenting. What makes tetrodotoxin especially terrifying is its stealth. Unlike venom delivered through a sting or bite, the pufferfish's toxin must be ingested or transferred through tissue contact. And it doesn't take much. In Japan, the fish is served as fugu, a luxury delicacy prepared only by specially licensed chefs trained for years in the precise anatomical removal of toxic parts. Yet accidents still occur. Even with regulation, diners have died. The toxin is heat stable and cannot be destroyed by cooking. The line between exquisite cuisine and catastrophic poisoning is razor thin, and one misplaced cut in the kitchen can mean cardiac arrest at the dinner table. Why such a small, seemingly defenseless fish would evolve such a sophisticated defense is a story of ecological vulnerability. The puffer is a slow swimmer, poorly equipped to outrun predators in open water. Its blunt body and minimal tail force it to rely on maneuvering, not speed. But what it lacks in velocity, it compensates for with biological deterrence. Many would-be predators learn the hard way. A juvenile shark or eel that bites a puffer often survives, but with a violent bout of tetrodotoxin-induced nausea and weakness that it won't forget. That memory lingers. In ecosystems with high puffer populations, predators develop a learned aversion not just to puffers, but to similarly shaped or moving prey. In this way, the puffer's defense radiates outward, not just protecting itself, but modifying behavior across entire food webs. The origin of the toxin, however, adds another layer of complexity. Pufferfish don't make tetrodotoxin themselves. Instead, they accumulate it through symbiotic bacteria, most notably Pseudomonas and Vibrio species, that live in their tissues. These bacteria are thought to enter the fish via the food chain, possibly from algae-eating organisms or benthic invertebrates. In captivity, where diets are controlled and these microbes are absent, puffers often have no measurable toxin at all. This suggests that their lethality is not solely genetic. It is ecological, dependent on environmental interaction and microbial partnership. The fish is not just a carrier of death, it's a habitat for it. Yet for all its defenses, the pufferfish is more than a passive ball of venom. It is a predator in its own right, using its beak-like teeth, formed from fused dental plates, to crush the shells of mollusks, snails, and crustaceans. Its jaws are strong enough to shatter coral rubble. When foraging, puffers show surprising intelligence, often manipulating objects with their fins or using jets of water to excavate prey from the sand. In captivity, they learn to recognize handlers, solve basic puzzles, and even exhibit play behavior, suggesting a cognitive capacity uncommon in fish. Some researchers rank their intelligence alongside cephalopods and certain birds. Despite their gentle appearance, puffers can be fiercely territorial. Males in particular may chase intruders away from breeding sites, using a combination of body displays and quick lunges. Their eyesight is acute, and they can rotate their eyes independently to scan their surroundings. In some species, males even construct elaborate geometric crop circles in the sand, complex nests used to attract females. These underwater structures, up to 2 meters wide, are precise enough to resemble artwork and complex enough to suggest spatial reasoning. Beneath the cartoonish face, a calculating engineer is at work. But humans, for all their fascination, often forget the boundaries of admiration. Divers have been known to chase or pick up puffers, prompting them to inflate out of panic. While inflation in air can damage the fish's internal organs, sometimes fatally, it also poses a risk to the handler. Accidental punctures from defensive spines, exposure to skin mucus, or careless contamination of open wounds can transfer toxins. Though rare, there are documented cases of contact exposure resulting in numbness, nausea, or worse. The danger isn't in deliberate attack. It's in forgetting that cuteness is not safety. Ecologically, the pufferfish plays a quiet but critical role. It regulates populations of reef invertebrates, contributes to the cycling of calcium through shell consumption, and serves as a vector for microbial transmission in reef environments. Its presence is often an indicator of benthic health, or in some regions of reef overgrowth, as puffers expand into human-altered environments. Invasive populations, such as those observed in the eastern Mediterranean, show how resilient and adaptable this group can be when released from natural controls. In the end, the pufferfish is not a paradox. It is a mirror of the reef itself, beautiful, deceptive, layered with hidden functions and lethal surprises. It floats through the coral world with gentle eyes and patient motion, yet inside it swirls one of the most powerful biochemical weapons evolution has produced, and that is the essence of oceanic danger. It does not always chase. It does not always growl or lunge or roar. Sometimes it smiles. Sometimes it floats. Sometimes it looks you in the eye and dares you to come closer. Beneath the rippling surface of a warm tropical reef, the underwater world pulses with movement and color. Fish of every imaginable hue dart through coral arches. Shrimp clean the scales of wrasses on polished stations. And in the sheltered folds of swaying anemone tentacles, a small orange and white striped figure hovers, flicking its fins in a rhythmic dance. The clownfish, Amphiprionini, is one of the reef's most iconic residents, an animal whose fame has been magnified by cinema and myth into a symbol of innocence, curiosity, and childlike charm. But here in the wild, away from Pixar glow, the clownfish tells a very different story. In the competitive chaos of the coral reef, survival is never about cuteness. It is about leverage, strategy, and the clownfish has mastered a rare form of symbiosis that turns the venom of others into a fortress of its own. Its partner in this arrangement is the sea anemone, a stationary predator whose tentacles are lined with stinging cells called cnidocytes, capable of firing harpoon-like nematocysts into passing prey or would-be attackers. Most fish that brush these tentacles recoil in pain, their skin punctured by microscopic syringes that inject paralyzing toxins. But the clownfish dances among them with impunity. This immunity is not inherited passively. Juvenile clownfish must undergo a behavioral and chemical adaptation process, a slow, deliberate contact with the tentacles that allows them to coat themselves in the anemone's mucus. By mimicking the anemone's biochemical profile, the fish avoids being recognized as a foreign object. It becomes part of the anemone's immune identity. Once accepted, the clownfish finds safety no open water can provide. It sleeps, feeds, and breeds among these tentacles, shielded by a wall of stinging death. But this is no equal partnership. The clownfish does not merely coexist, it manipulates. It positions itself as the anemone's sentry, patrolling the perimeter with a ferocity that belies its size. At just 10 centimeters in length, the clownfish will charge at anything that invades its space. Butterfly fish, wrasses, even the fins and fingers of unwelcome divers. These confrontations are not bluff. Clownfish have been documented delivering rapid strikes with their teeth, targeting soft skin or exposed flesh. While harmless to most larger creatures, the surprise and persistence of the attack is enough to deter further inspection. This aggression isn't just defensive, it's tactical. By driving off herbivores that might nip at the anemone's tentacles or shade its photosynthetic symbionts, the clownfish helps maintain the health of its host. It also fans the anemone with its movements, improving water circulation and waste dispersal. In return, the anemone offers not just protection but food, scraps from its own meals, or plankton driven into its tentacles by the clownfish's activity. It's a mutually beneficial relationship, but not a balanced one. Recent studies have revealed that clownfish can also manipulate the anemone's growth patterns. Through physical stimulation, the clownfish can induce greater tentacle expansion and movement, increasing the host's feeding efficiency. This feedback loop makes the anemone more dependent on the fish, a hallmark of what some researchers have called coercive mutualism. The clownfish doesn't just live with the anemone, it controls it. Even within their own social groups, clownfish operate on a hierarchy of dominance and suppression. All clownfish are born male, but in each group, often a small cluster living in a single anemone, only the largest individual becomes female. The second largest becomes the breeding male, while all others remain sexually immature. If the dominant female dies, the breeding male changes sex and becomes female, and the next subordinate male matures into her mate. This rigid structure is maintained through aggressive displays and physical enforcement. Subordinates that grow too large are often attacked or expelled. Such a system may seem alien, even brutal, but it ensures reproductive stability in a habitat where suitable anemones are limited. Clownfish are deeply tied to their host anemones, rarely straying more than a few meters from their protective tentacles. Losing that home means exposure, vulnerability, and in many cases, death. The hierarchy is not just social, it is existential. And yet, despite this intensity, clownfish are deeply sensitive to environmental disruption. Rising ocean temperatures, acidification, and coral bleaching events affect not just the coral, but the symbiotic relationships that depend on it. Anemones, like corals, house photosynthetic algae that help power their metabolism. When stressed, they expel these algae, a phenomenon akin to coral bleaching, becoming pale, weak, and less capable of supporting clownfish populations. Without a healthy host, clownfish fail to reproduce, fall prey to predators, or are forced into hostile takeovers of neighboring anemones. Their small size and iconic appearance make clownfish popular in the aquarium trade, a fact that has both conserved and endangered them. Captive breeding programs have succeeded in reducing pressure on wild populations, but illegal collection and habitat loss still threaten localized populations in parts of Indonesia and the Philippines. In aquaria, their behavior is still aggressive and territorial. Even in confined spaces, they chase, nip, and harass tank mates. The cuddly mythos does not hold up under glass. What the clownfish teaches us is that symbiosis is not always gentle. Sometimes it's strategic. It can be a tool of survival, a method of domination, and in some cases, a weapon. By aligning itself with the venomous power of the sea anemone, the clownfish has created a life that is both safe and ruthless, a fortress built on borrowed danger. Its colors may scream innocence, but its behavior whispers something else entirely. So the next time you see that flash of orange darting between the tentacles, that joyful bounce, that cartoon face, remember, it is not playing, it is patrolling. It is enforcing a contract as old as the reef itself, one where the price of protection is loyalty, and sometimes aggression. Because in this reef, alliances are not soft, they are armored in stings, and the smallest warrior is often the most ruthless. At the edge of a cold Pacific bay, where kelp forests sway in rhythm with the tide and fog rolls in like slow smoke from the sea, a small silhouette floats effortlessly on its back, paws folded across a fuzzy chest, eyes squinting at the rising sun. A stone on its belly, a mollusk in its paw. With rhythmic precision, the shell is cracked open, the meat consumed. This is the sea otter, Enhydra lutris, marine mammalogy's most disarming mascot. But beneath the soft fur and playful reputation lies something far more complex. In the tangled forest of kelp and myth, the sea otter is not just a charming survivor. It is a territorial brawler, an opportunist, and in the most unsettling cases, a violent and unpredictable aggressor. Evolution has crafted the sea otter into a specialist, a creature that abandoned the terrestrial life of its mustelid relatives and embraced a wholly aquatic existence. Its adaptations are elegant, a dense, insulating pelt with more hair per square inch than any other animal, webbed hind feet that act as powerful paddles, and front paws with dexterous grip capable of manipulating prey and tools alike. Unlike other marine mammals that rely on blubber for insulation, the sea otter's fur is its thermal shield, a meticulous weave of air-trapping filaments groomed constantly to maintain buoyancy and warmth. But this cute package carries with it a brain shaped by cold water survival, high metabolic demand, and fierce ecological competition. To feed its ravenous metabolism, the sea otter must consume up to 25% of its body weight in food per day. This is not casual grazing. It is relentless, calculated foraging across tidal zones and subtidal benthic communities. Otters dive for sea urchins, crabs, clams, snails, and fish, prying them from rocks, crushing shells with stones, and using their bellies as floating tables. In doing so, they engineer their environment. In areas where sea otters flourish, they keep urchin populations in check, preventing these voracious grazers from destroying kelp forests. This ecological role as a keystone species has made the sea otter a symbol of balance and resilience. But this ecological necessity does not extend to their individual behavior. In the wild, particularly among males, sea otters can be alarmingly violent. Mating involves forced copulation, often initiated by a male grasping a female from behind and biting her face and neck to maintain hold. This can leave the female with open wounds, broken skin, and in some cases, fatal injuries. In areas with dense male competition and skewed sex ratios, these behaviors can intensify. If a male cannot find a receptive female, he may direct his aggression elsewhere. In one of the most disturbing sets of observations ever recorded by marine biologists, a subadult male sea otter in California was documented mounting, drowning, and retaining the bodies of juvenile harbor seals. Over the course of several days, he repeated the behavior, holding the seal pups underwater, biting their heads, and continuing to engage in sexual behavior with the corpses long after death. These were not acts of hunting. They were not predation. They were something else entirely. Behavior that defies easy categorization, that speaks to the murky overlap between instinct, frustration, and behavioral pathology. Cannibalism, too, has been observed in extreme cases. In high-density environments, or following territorial disputes, male otters have been documented consuming pups, often to eliminate competition or disrupt maternal bonds. The soft image of mother and pup floating hand in hand is indeed real and beautiful, but it exists in tension with the brutal ecology surrounding them. Territoriality is another hidden current beneath the sea otter's playful facade. Males maintain expansive territories, which they patrol aggressively. In the Aleutian Islands and parts of the Californian coast, violent altercations between males have been observed, including biting, chasing, and ramming. These battles can escalate into prolonged physical conflict, resulting in injury or displacement. Despite their small size, males weigh between 25 and 40 kilograms, otters possess a bite force strong enough to crush the armored shells of sea urchins and crabs. That same bite, when directed at a rival or intruder, can inflict serious wounds. Their canines, while hidden by a rounded snout, are formidable, remnants of their carnivorous ancestry. Intelligence complicates the picture further. Sea otters rank among the most intelligent of marine mammals. They use tools, a rare trait among non-primate animals, not only to crack open prey, but also to store food and even collect favorite rocks in underarm pouches. They teach young by demonstration, exhibiting generational learning. But intelligence in nature is never neutral. It can be harnessed for cooperation or cunning. Otters have been observed stealing food from other individuals, manipulating kelp to trap prey, and even using deception to mask their foraging locations. This is not the mind of a helpless fluffball. It is the mind of a strategic player in a high-stakes, resource-scarce ecosystem. Despite their aggression and unpredictability, sea otters remain vital to the health of coastal ecosystems. Their return to areas once decimated by hunting has led to the recovery of kelp forests and associated biodiversity. Yet their resurgence also brings them into increasing contact with humans, divers, kayakers, fishers, and the encounter is not always pleasant. Otters have attacked humans when cornered or disturbed, inflicting bites that require stitches or antibiotics. Their cuteness invites close approach. Their reality often punishes it. And yet their greatest danger to us may not be their teeth, but our own misperceptions. In a world conditioned to categorize animals as either dangerous or adorable, the sea otter occupies a gray zone, one where the boundary between innocence and violence blurs. It is not an anomaly. It is a reminder that in nature, evolution favors effectiveness over likability, that the same species that cracks open abalone with finesse can drown a rival in a turf war. As the tide creeps in, a mother otter bobs gently in the kelp, grooming her pup, nibbling at its fur with soft precision. A moment later, two males square off nearby, circling, hissing, teeth bared. One lunges, the other dives. The stillness returns, but the current has shifted. Because the sea does not separate the gentle from the brutal, it folds them together. And sometimes the most dangerous predator is the one still floating on its back, stone in hand, smile on its face. In the warm, sunlit shallows where sea meets sand and the surf hisses over flat reef plates, there drifts a shape so fluid, so silent, it seems not to swim, but to levitate. A stingray glides across the bottom like a sheet of silk riding invisible currents, its broad wing-like pectoral fins undulating in perfect harmony with the water's rhythm. Its motion is ghost-like, the shadow it casts barely perceptible, almost indistinguishable from the wavering play of sunlight on the seafloor. There is no fanfare to its presence, no threat in its posture. It is grace incarnate, a dancer born of water and light. But hidden within that serenity is a weapon so precise, so efficient, that it has scarcely changed in millions of years. A sharp, barbed spine at the base of its tail, serrated like a saw blade, and sheathed in a thin layer of tissue laced with venom. The stingray does not flaunt this weapon. It does not strike without cause. Yet in one sudden lash of the tail, it can puncture flesh, pierce bone, and inject a toxin that ignites the body in agony. The stingray is not a predator of people, but it is armed like one, and when disturbed, especially by feet, hands, or the curious missteps of the unaware, it becomes one of the most dangerous animals in the ocean's quietest corners. The family Dasyatidae includes dozens of stingray species, ranging in size from palm-sized reef dwellers to the massive freshwater stingrays of Southeast Asia. Most are bottom feeders, scouring the substrate for small crustaceans, mollusks, and worms using electroreceptive sensors located around their mouths. These sensory pores detect the faintest electric signals given off by buried prey, a crab's twitch, a clam's heartbeat, guiding the ray to its meal beneath sand and silt. They feed by creating a powerful suction with their mouths, yanking prey from their burrows and crushing them between hard dental plates before swallowing. Their mouths are located on the underside of their bodies, a placement that mirrors their evolutionary cousin, the shark. But unlike sharks, stingrays evolved for subtlety. Their flattened form, dorsoventrally compressed, makes them perfectly suited to lie flush against the seafloor, often buried beneath a fine dusting of sand, with only their spiracles, small openings behind the eyes, exposed to draw in water for breathing. From this position, the stingray becomes nearly invisible, a living mine beneath your feet. It is in this stillness that danger lies. The vast majority of stingray injuries occur not in deep water, not during feeding or provocation, but from inadvertent contact, a swimmer stepping on one buried in the shallows. The ray, startled and pinned, lashes its tail upward in a reflexive arc, driving the spine into whatever presses down on it. This isn't a strike of vengeance. It's an escape mechanism, evolved to deter predators like sharks or crocodiles, but tragically effective against barefoot tourists. The spine itself is a marvel of biological engineering. Made of vasodentin, a cartilage-like material denser and more flexible than bone, it tapers to a needle-fine tip and is lined with recurved serrations, allowing it to slice through tissue on the way in and shred it on the way out. Its venom glands run along the groove of the spine and release a cocktail of proteins that cause intense pain, tissue necrosis, and in some cases systemic effects like vomiting, muscle cramps, and difficulty breathing. The pain, described by many as searing, can last for hours. In severe cases, particularly when the spine punctures the abdomen, chest, or neck, death is not just possible, it's sudden. The most famous stingray incident in modern history occurred in 2006, when renowned wildlife educator Steve Irwin was fatally pierced in the chest by a stingray barb while filming underwater off the coast of Queensland, Australia. The ray, likely startled in the tight confines of a shallow reef channel, drove its barb into Irwin's heart. His death was not the result of malice or targeted aggression. It was a tragic confluence of proximity, pressure, and reflex. Yet it served as a sobering reminder, even the ocean's most placid creatures carry sharp edges. Despite these risks, stingrays are not aggressors. Divers and snorkelers encounter them daily without issue. Rays often tolerate close observation, especially when approached calmly and respectfully. In popular tourist areas, some rays even associate humans with food, approaching for handouts. This habituation, while seemingly benign, increases the risk of accidents. Rays that are cornered or startled in these interactions may react defensively. Their evolutionary lineage stretches back hundreds of millions of years. Rays are elasmobranchs, like sharks, cartilaginous fishes with ancient roots. But where sharks evolved into apex hunters, stingrays specialized in camouflage, sensory perception, and passive defense. Their long gestation periods, low reproductive rates, and sight fidelity make them vulnerable to overfishing and habitat degradation. In some areas, rays are hunted for their meat, cartilage, and skins, and large-scale trawling operations destroy the seagrass beds and sandy flats they rely on for feeding and breeding. Yet in ecosystems where they remain stable, stingrays are ecological keystones. Their constant foraging disturbs the benthos, oxygenating sediment and stirring up nutrients for other species. They help regulate populations of bivalves and crustaceans, maintaining the balance of reef floor communities. Even their discarded barbs, often regrown after use, become microhabitats, embedded in the reef like arrowheads in a battlefield, colonized by algae and invertebrates. In certain cultures, rays are revered. In Polynesian mythology, they are spirit guardians, symbols of freedom and stealth. In traditional Hawaiian lore, rays represent transformation, messengers of the sea that ferry souls between worlds. These stories, born from generations of coexistence, reflect not just awe, but respect, a recognition of the stingray's quiet power. As the sun climbs higher and the tide pulls outward, the ray begins to stir. Its outline emerges from the sand, like an apparition made real. A ripple of muscle runs through its fins. With a gentle push of water, it lifts from the bottom and resumes its glide, vanishing into the shimmer of the shallows. It leaves no trail, no sound, just memory of something graceful, beautiful, and armed. Because here, in the lull of the reef and the hush of the bay, danger doesn't always arrive with teeth. Sometimes it floats, sometimes it hides, and sometimes it pierces, not in rage, but in retreat. The stingray is not a hunter. It is a lesson, a reminder that in the ocean, elegance is no guarantee of innocence. In the quiet, sun-drenched lagoons that cradle the edges of coral reefs, where seagrass sways in slow motion and the horizon drips with heat, there moves a creature so ancient, so emblematic of peace, that its very image has become shorthand for tranquility. The green sea turtle, Chelonia midas, glides with the composure of something that has nothing left to prove. Its flippers stroke the water with hypnotic rhythm, its domed shell catching dappled light like a living sculpture. Observers above the surface often describe this species with reverence, calm, wise, gentle. But beneath that timeless silhouette is a creature far more complex, one that will bite, charge, and fight when provoked or challenged. In the dynamic theater of the reef, peace is not passivity, and even the gentlest herbivore has teeth. The green sea turtle is among the largest hard-shelled sea turtles in the world, with adults reaching over 150 kilograms in weight and over a meter in length. Its name doesn't come from the color of its shell, which can range from olive to dark brown, but from the greenish tint of its fat, a byproduct of its plant-based diet. Unlike carnivorous relatives like the loggerhead, green turtles shift toward herbivory as adults, grazing on seagrasses and algae with surprising efficiency. Their jaws are sharp and beak-like, edged for slicing through tough aquatic vegetation. But those same beaks, built for tearing fiber from rock, can easily cut flesh. And in the wrong context, they do. Despite their peaceful reputation, green sea turtles are territorial, particularly in algae-rich shallows, where prime feeding grounds are limited. A single seagrass bed may be home to dozens of individuals, and in these crowded spaces, disputes arise. Turtles, unlike schooling fish, do not yield territory easily. Males and females alike have been observed defending feeding patches and basking spots by ramming, striking with their heads, or biting the flippers and tails of rivals. These confrontations aren't incidental. They're calculated. Slow-motion jousts that begin with posturing and end in bruises or blood. The mating season, however, brings a sharper edge to their behavior. In coastal breeding grounds across the tropics and subtropics, males compete aggressively for access to receptive females. Their tools of persuasion are not subtle. Males approach with persistence, grasping the female's carapace with long, curved claws on their forelimbs, sometimes holding on for hours. If the female resists, or if multiple males target the same individual, chaos ensues. Turtles crash into one another, bite and strike with their powerful heads. These battles can drag the participants across reefs and into open water, leaving injuries that range from torn flesh to fractured shells. For humans sharing these waters, the consequences of getting too close are often underestimated. Tourists seeking encounters with turtles, whether by snorkeling, diving, or feeding, are sometimes met with sudden, forceful responses. The phenomenon of surge strikes occurs when startled or agitated turtles suddenly flee their position, often colliding with swimmers. A 150-kilogram reptile moving at full thrust through water is not a harmless bump. These collisions have resulted in broken noses, concussions, dislocated shoulders, and deep lacerations from the edges of the shell. In documented cases, individuals attempting to ride or grab turtles have triggered aggressive defense, bites to the thigh, rapid twisting that pulls swimmers underwater, or repeated charges intended to drive the person off. Their anatomy makes them deceptively dangerous in close quarters. The shell, or carapace, is not just a shield. It is fused bone, a hardened extension of the ribcage and vertebrae. It acts as a battering ram when used in conflict. Their heads, often thought of as small compared to their bodies, are compact and dense, with reinforced jaw muscles capable of delivering crushing force. Their flippers, while elegant in motion, become blades in combat, propelling them with speed that can surprise even experienced divers. Unlike dolphins or seals, turtles do not use warning sounds or bluff behaviors. When they respond, it is with motion, direct, sudden, and physical. Even hatchlings are equipped with this determination. From the moment they emerge from their sandy nests, they charge across the beach under a storm of predation. Birds, crabs, and fish, all waiting to consume them. Only a fraction survive the gauntlet, and those that do grow into adolescence, shaped by scarcity, threat, and instinct. Turtles that live long enough to reach maturity have done so by learning when to flee and when to strike. Their migrations span thousands of kilometers, from nesting beaches to feeding grounds and back again. They navigate with magnetic sensitivity, detecting the Earth's field like a living compass. They return, often decades after hatching, to the very beaches where they were born. In these pilgrimages, they cross polluted currents, shark-patrolled straits, and fishing nets that drag them to the brink of extinction. But the survivors endure, toughened not by aggression alone, but by adaptability and an evolutionary toughness honed over 100 million years. In ecosystems, they serve critical roles. By grazing seagrasses, they prevent overgrowth, keeping beds healthy and promoting biodiversity. Their foraging creates patches of younger, more digestible shoots that support other grazers. In coral reefs, where they consume algae from rocks, they help prevent algal blooms that would otherwise smother coral polyps. Their nesting activities return marine nutrients to coastal dune systems. Even in death, their carcasses feed scavengers, from tiger sharks to hermit crabs. The green sea turtle is not just a resident of the ocean. It is an ecological mechanic, constantly repairing and maintaining balance in a fragile system. But their resurgence, thanks to conservation, comes with new tensions. In protected waters, where tourism increases and natural predation is reduced, turtles encounter humans more often, and with fewer natural incentives to avoid them. The line between interaction and interference blurs. In many regions, feeding turtles, whether intentionally or accidentally, alters their behavior, drawing them into unnatural proximity with humans. What was once a creature wary of approach becomes one that expects food and punishes disappointment. In these moments, the illusion cracks. The wise elder of the reef becomes something else, a reactive, defensive, and remarkably strong reptile capable of injury. As the tide swells over the shallows, a green turtle lifts from the bottom with effortless grace, trailing a ribbon of disturbed sand. It passes a coral outcrop, then veers abruptly, startled by the approach of a swimmer. With a single thrust of its flippers, it rockets away, brushing the swimmer's arm with its shell in passing. The contact leaves behind not just a bruise, but a lesson. Size does not equal slowness, and calm does not mean safe. Because in the ocean, the animals that carry the oldest wisdom also carry the oldest reflexes. And when a turtle strikes, it does not apologize. It just swims away, ancient, armored, and never as peaceful as it looks. The Antarctic wind howls across a desolate expanse of ice, slicing between jagged rock outcrops and fields of broken blue-white glaciers. The sky is a sheet of grey steel, the sea a freezing churn of brine and crashing flows. Here, in one of Earth's most punishing climates, where temperatures plummet below -50 degrees Celsius and the sun disappears for months, life should be impossible. Yet in this polar crucible, a legion of squat, feathered figures marches inland across the frozen landscape. In the distance, a cacophony builds. A staccato chorus of brays, squawks, and guttural cries echoes from the ice shelf like a battlefield rally. The penguins have arrived. With their upright posture, shuffling gait, and comically oversized feet, penguins have been anthropomorphized more than almost any other animal. To many, they are nature's tuxedoed clowns, awkward on land, adorable in their waddling parades, wholesome in their pair bonds and chick-rearing. But this sanitized view obscures the reality. Penguins are tough, tenacious, and at times brutally violent. Their world is not a frozen playground. It is a war zone, a chaotic theater of survival, competition, and primal instinct, where social order is enforced with bloodied beaks and battered flippers. Of the 18 recognized species of penguin, several inhabit temperate zones, but none have captured the world's imagination like the cold climate giants, particularly the emperor and Adelie penguins of Antarctica. These birds breed in immense colonies that can number in the tens of thousands. Males huddle together in storm-battered formations to conserve heat, rotating from outer edges to inner warmth in a slow communal dance that may be the only thing standing between them and death. But inside these huddles and rookeries, competition is fierce and patience thin. When the time comes to find a mate, defend a nest, or fight for space, the masks come off. Flipper fights are a staple of penguin social dynamics. During breeding season, males stake out small patches of land on which to build their nests, often simple scrapes in the ice, or small piles of pebbles in rockier zones. These territories are hotly contested. Males that approach too closely are met with explosive aggression. Wings spread, heads low, they charge and strike each other with their flippers, Not feathered fans, but muscular clubs reinforced by dense bone. Each blow lands with the force of a clenched fist. These fights can last minutes, leaving both opponents bloodied, eyes swollen shut, feathers torn loose and scattered like confetti on the snow. When one male gains the upper hand, the loser retreats, if he can. In denser colonies, there's nowhere to flee. Tensions boil over. Squabbles erupt not only between males but also between mates, between neighbors, between rivals eyeing each other's chicks or unguarded pebbles. The Adelie penguin, small and round-eyed, is especially notorious for its aggression. Males have been observed forcibly mating with dead females, stealing chicks, or abducting unguarded juveniles, either to raise as their own or to kill in a bizarre display of redirected aggression. These behaviors are rare, but well documented, and they shatter the myth of penguins as noble nurturers. Even within parental duties, violence simmers beneath the surface. Both parents share brooding and feeding duties, regurgitating krill, fish, and squid to their chicks. But if a chick becomes weak, underdeveloped, or displaced, it's often abandoned or attacked. In lean years, when food is scarce or ice conditions worsen, parents may cannibalize their own young or those of nearby pairs. This is not cruelty, it is triage. Penguins, like all animals adapted to extreme environments, must optimize survival with brutal efficiency. Yet for all their brutality, penguins are extraordinary navigators of chaos. Emperor penguins trek over 100 kilometers inland to breed, using only celestial cues and the Earth's magnetic field to return to colonies across an ever-shifting landscape of ice. Their feet, bare against the frozen ground, are riddled with arteries that circulate warm blood in loops to prevent frostbite. Their feathers, densely packed and coated with waterproof oil, trap air to insulate against the cold. Beneath that is a thick layer of blubber, allowing them to dive hundreds of meters into pitch-black depths in pursuit of fish and squid, where pressure triples and light disappears. These adaptations make penguins masterful dual-environment specialists. In water, they are transformed, torpedo-shaped, agile, and astonishingly fast. Emperor penguins can reach speeds of over 10 kilometers per hour underwater, using powerful strokes of their flippers to shoot through schools of fish or glide beneath sea ice in long, echoing vaults of silence. To escape predators like leopard seals, they rocket out of the water and onto the ice in graceful arcs, propelled by compressed bubbles trapped under their feathers. On land, they may look foolish. In the ocean, they are poetry in motion. Still, it is their life on land, the breeding ground, that reveals their fiercest edge. Pebbles, in particular, are the currency of penguin real estate. For species like Adelie and Gentoo penguins, nest construction depends on collecting the smoothest, flattest stones. But these pebbles are rare. Males steal from each other constantly, creeping into neighboring nests to snatch a prize while the owner's back is turned. Caught in the act, the thief is assaulted, flippered back into submission, or chased across the colony. These tiny thefts often spiral into larger battles over mates, space, lineage. In this frozen city of birds, war is always one pebble away. Conservation has helped many penguin species rebound, but climate change is once again testing their limits. Melting sea ice, shifting fish populations, and warming ocean currents have begun to fracture the food web that sustains them. As breeding colonies are forced to relocate or collapse, penguins face mounting competition not only from each other, but from the vanishing rhythm of the ecosystem they depend on. What was once violence born of instinct is now layered with desperation. A contest not just of strength, but of time. Back on the ice shelf, the wind dies briefly. The sky lightens. A juvenile chick, still covered in soft grey down, begs for food with a high-pitched whistle. Its parent turns away, shielding its crop for another day's worth of digestion. Nearby, two males resume a fight, blows landing wetly, feathers flying. No one intervenes, because here survival is not about gentleness, it's about grit. Penguins are not nature's comedians. They are cold climate warriors, forged in blizzards and starvation, driven by instinct and sharpened by scarcity. They wear their tuxedos not for ceremony, but for camouflage. And their waddling march across the ice is not a parade, it is a campaign. The ocean floor is a slow-moving mosaic, a still life composed of coral rubble, scattered shells, meandering sand trails, and the rhythmic pulses of reef light refracting through a living kaleidoscope of water. In this underwater tapestry, Many things seem lifeless at first glance, fixtures in a fluid world, and none appear more inanimate than the sea urchin. A perfect sphere of dark spines clinging to rock or resting among broken coral, it resembles something discarded or decorative. Divers pass them without pause. Children collect their skeletons on beaches. Photographers frame them for their symmetry. But beneath this fragile-looking shell of beauty lies one of the reef's most underestimated survivalists, a nearly immobile creature armed with a medieval arsenal of spears, poisons, and molecular traps. The sea urchin doesn't chase. It doesn't strike. It simply waits and lets you come to it. Urchins belong to the class Echinoidea, part of the phylum Echinodermata, a group that includes starfish, sea cucumbers, and brittle stars. What unites them is a radial symmetry, often five-fold, and a unique water vascular system used for locomotion, feeding, and respiration. While most echinoderms display movement, the sea urchin is the sentry of the group. Its dome-shaped body, encased in a rigid exoskeleton called a test, is covered in spines that range from short and blunt to needle-thin and dangerously brittle. Beneath these spines lie rows of tiny tube feet, operated by internal hydraulic pressure, allowing it to creep silently across the substrate in search of algae, detritus, or decomposing organic matter. It is a grazer, a cleaner of the reef, and a keystone in marine nutrient cycling. But its passivity is deceptive. When threatened or stepped on, the sea urchin's true weaponry reveals itself. The spines, particularly those of species like Diadema and Trypneustes, are not just sharp. They're engineered to break. Composed of calcium carbonate with a porous internal structure, they snap off easily upon impact, embedding themselves into the skin, muscle, or even bone of the intruder. Once lodged, these spines are difficult to remove, fragmenting with pressure, and often migrating deeper with movement. The pain is immediate and sharp, but it's what follows that makes the urchin a true menace. Inflammation, swelling, and in some cases, weeks of persistent infection as the body battles the foreign fragments. Without medical intervention, injuries can lead to abscesses, nerve compression, or in rare cases, systemic infection. But not all urchins rely solely on mechanical damage. Some species, like Toxopneustes pileolus, known ominously as the flower urchin, possess specialized structures called pedicellariae, tiny jaw-like appendages that function as biochemical landmines. These structures are mounted between the spines and are often invisible to the naked eye. When triggered, they snap shut on skin and inject venom, a neurotoxic blend of proteins that can cause extreme pain, nausea, muscle paralysis, and in severe envenomations, respiratory distress or loss of consciousness. These urchins are responsible for some of the most serious urchin-related medical incidents in tropical waters. Flower urchins, found primarily in the Indo-Pacific, are particularly insidious. Their vibrant coloration and delicate appearance resemble blooming coral, an evolutionary bait that lures divers, snorkelers, or unknowing photographers in for a closer look. But proximity alone is enough. A brush of the ankle, a hand steadying itself on a reef ledge. That's all it takes. The jaws clamp, the toxin enters, and the pain begins its work. The victim may not even see what touched them. Only the sensation remains, burning, spreading, incapacitating. Urchins, despite their ancient lineage, are not passive relics of evolution. They have survived for hundreds of millions of years by becoming nearly untouchable. Their spines deter most fish, their pedicellariae disable or repel the curious, and their tendency to wedge into rock crevices or bury into sand makes them difficult to dislodge. Some species even cover themselves with shell fragments, algae or detritus as camouflage or UV protection, a behavior known as covering or masking, which also reduces their visibility to predators. Yet for all their defenses, sea urchins play indispensable roles in marine ecosystems. In healthy numbers, they keep algae in check, preventing it from overgrowing coral and choking out reef-building organisms. Their grazing maintains a dynamic balance that fosters coral recruitment, invertebrate diversity, and fish habitat. But when populations explode, often due to the removal of natural predators like triggerfish or sea otters, urchins can become agents of destruction, transforming vibrant reefs into urchin barrens. In these overgrazed wastelands, corals die, biodiversity plummets, and the reef's structural complexity collapses. The same mouth that nibbles algae becomes the mouth that devours an ecosystem. Urchins are also the victims of climate change. Ocean acidification, caused by the absorption of atmospheric CO2, reduces the availability of carbonate ions necessary for calcifying organisms like urchins to build their tests and spines. Warmer waters disrupt larval development and reproductive timing. In some regions, mass die-offs of urchins have cascaded into reef collapse. In others, invasive urchins spread unchecked, introduced through ballast water or aquaculture escapees, reshaping native habitats in unpredictable ways. The urchin is both fragile and destructive, a paradox that speaks to the ocean's complex interdependence. To humans, sea urchins have always been an object of fascination. Their dried skeletons, called tests, are collected as souvenirs. In parts of the world, their gonads, known as uni in Japanese cuisine, are considered delicacies. Yet the risk persists. Divers carry tales of urchin injuries like badges of initiation. A misjudged fin stroke, a backward fall, a momentary brush against a ledge. The consequences can linger for weeks. Each step on a reef, each handhold in a tide pool, becomes a game of chance. And therein lies the true danger. The sea urchin does not stalk, threaten, or announce. It simply is, resting, waiting, invisible in its stillness. It harms not by intention, but by position. Its presence turns a safe space into a trap, a hidden hazard among beauty. It is the reef's needle, silent, unmoving, and sharp. As the current shifts and the light grows dimmer with the approaching tide, the urchin does nothing. It does not flee. It does not flash warning. It remains where it has always been, silent beneath the coral's shadow, bristling with weapons, surrounded by the illusion of safety. Because in the ocean, not every danger swims. Some dangers wait. In the silty shallows of a muddy estuary, where coral gives way to low-visibility sand plains and the water churns with a brackish cocktail of life and decay, something strange glides across the seabed. Its form is uncertain. A long, striped serpent? A lionfish with billowing fins? A flatfish skimming the floor? It changes from one moment to the next, unfurling like silk and collapsing into itself, as though the water were painting it anew with each pulse of current. But this is no shape-shifting illusion. It is Thormoctopus mimicus, the mimic octopus, a soft-bodied cephalopod whose survival is built not on brute force, but on performance. And in this theater of predators, its stagecraft can mean the difference between life and digestion. First described only in the late 90s in the waters off Sulawesi, Indonesia, the mimic octopus remains one of the most bizarre discoveries in modern marine biology. Unlike its reef-dwelling relatives, it thrives in murky, silty coastal shallows, environments often avoided by other octopus species due to low visibility and a higher density of predators. Here, in the poor contrast of estuarine flats, the mimic doesn't just vanish into the background. It becomes something else entirely, something you don't want to eat. Its arsenal is dazzling. When threatened, the mimic octopus can contort its body and pattern its skin to resemble more than 15 different marine species, including venomous lionfish, stinging jellyfish, spiny sea urchins, and even banded sea snakes. These impersonations are not static disguises. They're dynamic theater, played out in real time. The octopus lifts two arms high above its body, spreading them in vertical fins to resemble a lionfish's venomous spines. It tucks 6 arms into its burrow and slithers with the other 2 trailing behind like the undulation of a sea snake. It flattens itself against the sand and flicks its arms in rhythmic waves, mimicking the glide of a sole fish. These are not just visual impressions, they are behavioral replicas. The mimic does not wear a costume. It acts. This deception isn't random, it is contextual. Studies have shown that the mimic octopus may choose which animal to imitate based on the nature of the threat it perceives. If confronted by territorial damselfish, it mimics a banded sea snake, one of the damselfish's natural predators. If threatened from above, it might become a venomous flatfish, splaying its body across the seabed and rippling like something not worth eating. The intelligence required for this level of conditional mimicry is profound, suggesting an awareness not only of its own abilities, but of the psychology of its enemies. This kind of adaptive behavior is rare, even among cephalopods, a class already known for its neurological prowess. Octopuses have distributed brains, not just in their central heads, but also in each arm, which can operate semi-independently. Their nervous systems are decentralized, allowing them to process touch, taste, and movement locally while responding to complex sensory inputs across their entire body. The mimic octopus elevates this decentralization into artistry. Each arm becomes an actor, a prop, a sensory scout. Their skin is a living canvas. Embedded within it are chromatophores, pigment-filled sacs controlled by muscles that allow for instantaneous shifts in color and texture. Beneath these are iridophores and leucophores, cells that reflect and scatter light, producing shimmer and brightness. Combined, they create the illusion of depth, striping, shadow, or warning colors. But the mimic doesn't just rely on these cells to blend in, it uses them to lie. This is not camouflage. It is counterintelligence. Like many octopuses, T. mimicus is a generalist carnivore, preying on small fish, crustaceans, and worms. It hunts by ambush and pursuit, darting forward with a sudden extension of its arms and pouncing on prey with the soft whoosh of water compressed by its mantle. Its beak, hidden beneath a tangle of arms, is sharp and powerful, capable of cracking shells or tearing through flesh. The mimic rarely uses force, but when it does, it's swift and decisive. What allows it to reach prey in such exposed terrain, open mudflats, sparse sand beds, tidal estuaries, is its reputation. A predator that sees a mimic thinks it's seeing a lionfish, or a snake, or something worse. Its defense system works against humans too. Divers often mistake the mimic for multiple animals in quick succession. Many reports of new species have turned out to be a single octopus in the middle of a performance. In poor visibility or during low-tide excursions, it can go entirely unnoticed or misidentified until too late. The mimic's preferred habitat, muddy, soft-bottomed shallows, is perhaps its most unexpected adaptation. Most octopuses avoid these areas, lacking hiding places and dominated by fast-moving predators like groupers, eels, and rays. But the mimic thrives here precisely because of that openness. In a terrain with no shadows, being a master of false identities is better than invisibility. It can move across the open ground like a traveler switching passports, evading suspicion not by hiding, but by misdirection. This approach also means the mimic octopus doesn't need to compete for reef crevices or rocky dens. It creates its own security bubble, a zone of false danger that follows it wherever it goes. Even its gait is designed for deception. While most octopuses crawl or swim in a spread position, the mimic lifts and undulates, shaping itself into false silhouettes that resemble known threats. The ocean is a place where visual memory matters, and the mimic hijacks that memory to its advantage. Reproductive behaviors of the mimic octopus remain largely mysterious, owing to its rarity and secretive habits. Like many cephalopods, it is semelparous, meaning it breeds once before death. Females lay thousands of eggs in concealed chambers, guarding them without feeding until they hatch. The tiny paralarvae float into the plankton, vulnerable to the same predators their parents spend lives outsmarting. Very few survive to adulthood. Those that do inherit not a weapon, but a story, a performance learned in their own skin. From an evolutionary perspective, the mimic octopus represents a different solution to the arms race of survival. While sharks grow teeth and turtles grow armor, the mimic grew theater. It didn't evolve to fight harder. It evolved to convince everyone else that fighting it wasn't worth the trouble. As the sun filters through a low tide in the silt-choked mangrove shallows, the mimic emerges once more. This time it flows like a jellyfish, arms trailing in delicate arcs. A shadow passes overhead, perhaps a predator, perhaps a diver. And in a heartbeat the body twists, stripes align, and a sea snake glides away into the gloom. It isn't real, but that doesn't matter. Because here, in the deceptive haze between predator and prey, the truth has no currency. Only illusion does, and the master illusionist always walks away. Even if it's on 8 legs. From the deck of a passing boat or the lens of a tourist's camera, the ocean often performs for us. Its surface glitters with serenity. Dolphins leap in playful arcs, sea turtles cruise like elder monks of the deep, and coral atolls shimmer with the promise of untouched paradise. To the human mind, trained for patterns and primed for visual comfort, the ocean's beauty is often mistaken for safety. But just beneath that charm, in the quiet eddies of the shallows and the false comfort of open blue, the sea tells a much older story. one where appearances are not invitations, but camouflage. One where the most dangerous creatures are not cloaked in menace, but in innocence. One where the illusion of gentleness becomes the perfect predatory strategy. Over the course of this journey, we've met the masters of this deception. Marine animals that have turned their disarming charm into evolutionary armor. The dolphin, whose wide grin and social charisma conceal a complex psychology capable of cruelty, dominance, and coordinated violence. The pufferfish, whose cartoon-like inflation belies a slow-release neurotoxin that can halt the human nervous system in minutes. The clownfish, whose bright stripes and sheltering anemone are not scenes from a children's movie, but the front lines of territory wars and chemical manipulation. The sea otter, all soft fur and floating repose, yet capable of territorial aggression, violent mating, and even infanticide. Each animal wears a different mask. Some, like the stingray, retreat into the seafloor and rely on reflex, not pursuit, to deliver pain and puncture. Others, like the green sea turtle, are simply massive and strong enough to injure humans unintentionally, colliding with powerful force when startled. And some are outright shapeshifters. The mimic octopus, a cephalopod contortionist, reprograms its appearance on command, using deception not just to survive, but to rewrite the behavior of predators and prey alike. It doesn't need speed, it doesn't need venom. It wins by confusing the very senses other animals depend on to kill. Then there are the dangers that don't move at all. The sea urchins, passive and spiny, that wait like traps set by the reef itself. Or the penguins, caricatured by waddling charm, yet hardened by a frozen battlefield of flipper fights, chick abductions and pebble thefts. There's no villain here, only a recurring theme. The ocean's capacity to turn every assumption upside down. When we fear the apex predators, we miss the subtler ones. When we scan the water for teeth, we ignore the beak, the barb, the biochemical cocktail waiting in the sting of a spine or the curl of a soft tentacle. What ties all these animals together is not size, not strength, and not even hostility. It is misdirection. Each in its own way thrives not by overpowering, but by outthinking. Or more precisely, by being underestimated. In a world filled with flashy displays and obvious danger, sharks, moray eels, electric rays, these animals flourish in the blind spot. They don't intimidate, they blend. They win by looking like they shouldn't. In evolutionary terms, this is one of the ocean's most effective adaptations, exploiting the predator's mind. When a creature is clearly dangerous, bold, dark, sharp, it invites avoidance. But when it looks harmless, it gets close. Close enough to escape. Close enough to strike. Close enough to teach its enemies not to trust their instincts. This is more than survival. It's psychological warfare. And humans, unlike other marine life, are especially prone to this kind of mistake. We interpret the ocean through aesthetic filters: cuteness, color, expression, posture. We anthropomorphize, placing emotional value on appearance. We assign meaning where nature has none, and in doing so, we make ourselves vulnerable to the very traits that evolution designed to fool predators. In essence, we are not only out of our element, we are reading from the wrong rulebook. This misalignment of expectation and reality becomes more dangerous in the era of increasing human-ocean interaction. As snorkeling and diving tourism grows, as marine animals become more habituated to human presence, as boundaries blur between observation and intrusion, our misunderstandings can become fatal. A stingray doesn't need to chase. A pufferfish doesn't need to bite. A turtle doesn't need to aim. The damage happens when we mistake proximity for safety. There is also a broader ecological truth hidden in these illusions. Many of these harmless killers play vital roles in their ecosystems. The sea otter, despite its dark behaviors, keeps urchin populations in check and protects kelp forests from collapse. The sea urchin, destructive when unchecked, is a grazer that maintains coral reef health in proper balance. The mimic octopus is a rare inhabitant of silted, predator-heavy estuaries, a place few animals dare to navigate. Their adaptations are not just for show. They are the product of pressures we often overlook: competition, climate change, habitat loss, and the silent daily struggle to exist in one of Earth's most hostile environments. And perhaps this is the greatest twist in the ocean's script. That danger does not always scream. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it floats. Sometimes it drifts across your path wearing the face of a friend. a cartoon, a childhood memory. Sometimes it's wrapped in charm, in beauty, in color so vibrant you forget the venom it conceals. The ocean does not lie, but it never promises to tell the whole truth. It only invites you to look closer, to see beyond the mask, to question the instinct that smiles back at a dolphin or reaches out for a turtle. Because in the sea, the most dangerous illusion is not the predator with teeth. It's the one that made you lower your guard.